For the agent that must be in the know, Medicare Industry Insider discusses critical insight, noteworthy trends, and upcoming issues in the Medicare market.
Deciphering and debating the legislation, regulation, and what's happening in the market. I'm Jalen Jackson.
And I'm Rachel Brameyer, and we're going to talk shop, dive deep into these complex topics, and make them understandable and actionable.
If you've ever wondered where the world of Medicare is going and how to prepare for the future, Medicare Industry Insider is the resource you've been looking for.
Welcome to another episode of Medicare Industry Insider. I'm Rachel Brameyer.
And I'm Jalen Jackson.
And today we're going to focus on CMS data and resources that you can find on this government website that just enhances everything that you'll do, from adding value to you as a resource to understanding what's actually available in your neck of the woods, figuring out what data you can look at to make sure that you're offering the right plans, that you know what everyone is filing claims on, to like literally everything in the weeds with data, just to make sure that you are a little bit above the competition. So today we're going to go into several different topics that we've kind of pulled of like different things that you can access and that's available. The first one we're going to go over is how much carriers, providers, and agents are getting paid. So this is important because you can not only see what the average industry payment is, but it helps you figure out like what an average is, broker compensation or provider payments in your local area. You can actually dive down into really detailed information and look at your specific area.
And I hope the big trend that people see today is, my gosh, there is so much data available.
Yeah.
And so many people have no clue that they can find answers to these questions. I can't begin to tell you how many times someone will be like, well, how much do these MA plans get paid for a beneficiary? And like, why don't we know that? Like, why don't? It's absolutely out there, folks. There's literally a spreadsheet that breaks it down county by county what the baseline payments for Medicare Advantage plans are, along with a ton of other data for providers, broker compensation guidelines, and then of course now more and more data that is either directly or indirectly useful for you. So things like transparency. There's all these machine readable files out there now due to some of the recent laws that require transparency in pricing. So group plans, individual market, hospitals have to share all this transparency data for what they're actually charging for services, what their negotiated rates are. And there's some great apps and third-party services out there now that are taking those machine readable files and translating it into information that's actually usable. So they've got a lot of great data on CMS that will show you kind of the initial information regarding some of those machine readable files. But again, probably want to go to one of these third-party sites to find useful data, because a million-line spreadsheet is not particularly useful for the average person.
Right, and the price transparency is new as of July 2022, so I'm sure they're still kind of working a little bit of the bugs out. Definitely is a little bit, like you said, difficult to sometimes see all that, but it is something that will be enforced. They're working on enforcing that and actually have penalties per day if it's not updated. So we should see a lot more price transparency on the group side as well as on the CMS monitored side within the next couple of years, hopefully before that even, because it should have gone into effect July 1st, 2022. So that's kind of a neat one that I know so many people have asked for. Like even when I was going to have Addie, my daughter, I couldn't figure out how much to even budget for. Like I called a couple times and every person I talked to gave me a different estimate. I talked to friends and family. Everyone gave me different estimates. And I do know that there's lots of different factors, like if you get an epidural or if you spend so many extra nights in the hospital or an emergency C-section happens. But like to even just say like, here's how much this should cost, I couldn't get an answer. So like going forward, and obviously I had her before 2022, but I think it's just important as you monitor like different things like surgeries or anything you've got coming up to be able to get a better idea of how much you're going to be actually spending.
Absolutely. And I think all of this data, as it continues to come out, as it continues to be kind of manipulated and played with, it's going to become more and more useful.
Right.
Because the big call it is like, we've got all this data, but what do we do with it? So the use for this is that ability to shop, that ability to look at, am I paying a fair value? And then, from the Medicare standpoint, when they start understanding better what the commercial payer system uses for their reimbursement rates and what they're paying providers and what hospitals are charging and that kind of charge master price for these different services, then we can maybe start to untangle this web that is healthcare and look at kind of where are the gaps where the payment for services rendered doesn't make sense. What are we overpaying for? What are we undervaluing? Things like that.
So if we pivot away from provider, carriers, and agent payments, we're going to go to Crosswalk Data. So that's literally just what plans are available and what are they either turning into, do they still exist, or are they getting pulled? And that's super important as an agent to know that, because then you can quickly see like, okay, these people are losing their plan. This plan is going to be this name, because you're probably going to be getting a lot of calls from your clients on like, hey, I got something from this plan that I didn't think that's what I signed up for. Or maybe a carrier got acquired or merged with another carrier. Now you're able to see like the name changed, but it's still the same plan. Maybe you don't have to, how much work do you actually have to do this season? Like, is it going to be, moving everyone from one plan to the next because that plan no longer exists? Or maybe it crosswalked into something that's really expensive and not valuable, or not valuable, not competitive, maybe price or benefits, things like that. So it just gives you a nice one sheet with everything in it.
Well, and it's such a great tool to uncover opportunity, because all this data shows you the upheavals in the market. So it's not just a plan that's continuing, that is maybe changing benefits. These are, very big functional changes for your clients. The name changes, maybe not so much, but plans that are ending, creating service area reductions, plans that are terminating their contract with CMS or have been terminated or discontinued, plans that are taking a chunk of beneficiaries and moving them into a new plan. And it can really help you identify things like, your beneficiaries that are on low-income subsidy that might have been auto-assigned a plan and maybe auto-assigned to something else because of the termination of one of these plans on the Crosswalk document. So lots of ways to use that to find opportunities to market, find opportunities to help more beneficiaries.
Yeah. And we'll pivot to landscapes, which is what they're called on CMS, but we also call them landscapes. I know some people don't always think of it like that. They're like, what's a landscape? So basically a landscape from CMS shows every single Medicare Advantage and PDP plan across the entire United States broken down by county. And it includes pricing. It includes, your max out of pocket. You'll see the plan name, the H number. You'll see basically all the data you need to know exactly what is available in that county and like high level pricing. This is what we use to kind of figure out like what is offered in that county. So if you're like, okay, like I'm coming into AEP right now, what exactly is available? It'll give you at least a high level, like quick look at here's all the different plans available, the H numbers, how much the premium is, and the max out of pocket. You can also use it this year for the wonderful disclaimer that we're having to use for the final rule, because we do have to add plans and products. So the plan name and then how many specific products you actually offer. So really, really great tool. Little hidden. It is always under the PDP section of CMS, but it's a tool we look forward to every year.
It really is. And, it's great just to give some data. I mean, if you're looking through this anyway, building your disclaimer, doing things like that, pull out some data points, because it makes great content. So if you're active on social media, trying to provide good content, it's really provides some little fascinating tidbits about Medicare to talk about the most expensive drug plan in the country being $198 a month.
Or the cheapest one.
Or the cheapest one. Yeah. Things like that. So you can pull some little tidbits out like that as well, just to demonstrate your knowledge, demonstrate some kind of fun little facts about Medicare that can go a long way in your social media while you're already doing this work to make sure that your disclaimer is correct and you understand what carriers, maybe you need to pick up a new carrier that you hadn't heard of, or someone moving into a new county or moving out of a county. It's a great way to get that 1,000-foot view of the market in a given county and see who's around, who the players are, and what pieces you may need to pick up to be competitive.
I'm going to skip a little bit because it kind of goes into the whole data part, but we also wanted to let you know you can also pull enrollment data, which like Chalon just said, adding additional content for your social media, a little edge above your competition. It also gives you a quick way to pull what is available in a county if you don't normally work with it too. So the enrollment data, basically you can see exactly who is enrolled in what plan and how many are enrolled in that plan. It's broken down by different things like plan, by state. There's one that's broken down by county, plan, and state. But essentially it allows you to see exactly who is enrolled in what. And I think it's another good indication of like what the providers and the doctor hospital networks enjoy working with too, because you'll kind of see like, well, this one looks like it's a good plan, but how come people aren't enrolled in it?
Yep.
So it can give you a nice high level overview of like what is available and who is enrolled.
Mm-hmm. And while obviously something like that should never guide your decision making alone, it can definitely give you some ideas of maybe where to start with a new beneficiary, understanding which plans are most popular in a given county, which ones have the largest number of enrollment, and then also taking a look at winners and losers, because you can compare that data month to month or year over year to look at which plans gained market share, which plans lost market share, and look at kind of why that happened, so you can establish, who's investing heavily in their plans, who maybe step back a little bit, and start looking at things of those as a planning tool. Also, if you take a look, a lot of these are in a lot of this data that we've talked about so far is in kind of spreadsheet format. So you're going to have to use a little Excel wizardry to really pull any useful data out of here. But there is also the Medicare Enrollment dashboard that's a little easier to manage. It's a little more interactive, map-based tool that you can still pull some basic enrollment data from. Just even get simple data like how many people in this county are in Medicare Advantage versus MedSup, or Medicare Advantage versus Original Medicare. What percentage of enrollees have a Part D plan. So things like that can really help you. If you're an agent that's looking to expand, it's a great tool to look for expansion opportunities where there's maybe a mismatch in a market, or some growth opportunity that other people may not see.
Gosh, there's so many different fun ways you could use the data. I feel like you and I could sit down and brainstorm for hours, but between marketing, between being a professional in the community, being able to quickly pull data, even helping a client that like maybe it's in a county you don't ever work with, there's so many different ways you can use that data. So now we're talking if your client needs corrective action, or sorry, not your client, if the plan itself, you're wanting to do some sort of corrective action, you can also dig into correction action plans based on carrier and providers. So that's a really good way that you can see like what's actually happening out there. Are they actually correcting things? But it walks through exactly what the states are requiring of each plan.
Yep, absolutely. So there's a couple aspects to this. The corrective action plans can be anything from minor contract administration issues where CMS has requested some kind of correction to how a plan or provider is carrying out their duties under their contract with Medicare. There is also another section that is Part C and D enforcement actions, which are sanctions against plans that can be suspension of enrollment, termination of contracts, civil monetary penalties, any number of different actions that CMS might take to monitor plans that are underperforming in a specific way. So again, ways that are not fulfilling their duty to CMS and the beneficiaries. So lots of great research sources there that you can see which plans are being affected by these corrective action plans, or which providers perhaps. If you are hearing from clients, hey, we're having a lot of issues with this provider, great place to look and say, hey, are they under some kind of corrective action plan already? To see if, this is a problem provider already. I can understand why that's happening, or maybe it's a new issue that needs to be reported to CMS.
Yeah, it's just an extra way to be a little bit more knowledgeable about your local community, see what's actually happening in your neck of the woods, and basically just help your clients overall, making sure they're making good decisions and directing them to good resources. Corrective action plans are scheduled to be published on the 15th of each month, so you can always see like a little updates on, maybe that provider is going through a corrective action process. There is even a piece on CMS where you can actually see the process of that corrective action and like where they are on that step too. So that's kind of neat as well.
Absolutely. And, I think one that we're very excited for every year that comes out is star ratings. Obviously, super common to see that come out from the carriers, come out, in even the media to an extent, but star ratings are such a huge part of the business we are in. Not only does it affect plan choice for our beneficiaries, it affects how much plans get paid. It's a huge chunk of money that they can gain or lose based on those star ratings. And I think a lot of people underutilize the star ratings in making a plan decision based on only that surface level data. So what you can see if you start pulling this data is not just the overall star ratings, 1 through 5 or 0 through 5, I guess, for a plan, but you can actually break that down by star ratings category. There's a number of categories of performance that are ranked and weighted to create that overall star ratings category. But let's say you have a plan that is a 4.5 star plan. You can dig into that plan and see that maybe they kind of got 4.5s across the board. Maybe that's great, but maybe they got mostly 5s across the board, except their, billing satisfaction was like a 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can kind of see maybe where your clients might struggle with a particular plan and where they may need a little more hand-holding or follow-up to ensure that they're getting the care they need, and making sure that you're doing your best job as an agent to put them in a plan that's easy for them to work with.
Yeah, and I think even just paying attention not only to the 4 or 5 star plans, 5 obviously gives you that election code that you can enroll all year long, which is nice. They're getting a lot more money and subsidies from the government to help build their plan and basically add extra benefits and things to make the plan more enticing for your clients. But also paying attention to those 2 star plans, because if you hit that 2-year mark on the 2 years, or if they've been 2 stars for more than 2 years, then they can get sanctioned. So if your client is kind of insisting on a plan that maybe is a 2-star plan, looking at historical data to see how many years have they actually had that 2-star designation, and basically what that could potentially mean to them.
Mm-hmm. And the big thing to note too is, star ratings are getting harder to achieve. CMS over the past few years has changed the ranking metrics, really making plans work for those star ratings. So, and there was a point in time where they were given some flexibility with COVID, where we had the largest number of 5-star plans we'd ever had. We saw a ton of really high-performing plans that were getting a lot of additional money. CMS has kind of cracked back down on that. A lot of this was stuff that was already planned even before COVID, kind of rolling into some new measurements and some new models for developing these star ratings. And we kind of started seeing the effects last year, where over 50% of plans had a lower star rating for 2023 than they did in 2022. Mm-hmm. So as we continue to see those star ratings get harder to achieve, we can maybe potentially expect to see a downtrend in star ratings again. But in all likelihood, plans will just have to rise to meet that challenge and to meet some of these new metrics that CMS is measuring.
Right. So the next thing we're going to roll into is compliance data. There's a ton of compliance data available. The one that most people, I think, reference is the Medicare Communication and Marketing Guidelines. That is where a lot of the carriers themselves go to build their own compliance worksheets or 101, things like that. But if you wanted to go in and see actually what does CMS actually say, that's a really good spot to start and take a look at.
And that's another one that's changed a little bit over the years. So the Medicare Communications and Marketing Guidelines, MCMG, used to be the end-all, be-all primary place for compliance data. Over the past few years, CMS has transitioned to most of their rulemaking and guidance going directly into the Code of Federal Regulations, or the CFR. So you'll see that final rule come out. And this is a great chance to call out also the Federal Register. So that's just the place online where you can find anything that's about to become part of the Code of Federal Regulations, part of the laws of the United States. And those do get published regularly. You can set up alerts and things like that to get notified anytime CMS publishes something, or any other government agency that's about to become a rule of law. So that's where a lot of it goes now, but they still use the MCMG for kind of updates, or what we would call sub-regulatory guidance. So, regulations, the CFR is going to be, here's what we're saying. The MCMG is, here's what we mean.
Yes. Yeah, and I think knowing about both of them and kind of when they come out to, the Medicare Communication and Marketing Guidelines, like you said, are updates or sub-regulatory pieces, but so they're updated kind of randomly. And if you look back, sometimes it can be a couple of years old with like updates to it. Versus the final rule, that's something that happens yearly.
Yep.
Normally in May or June, we'll see like something published and then several updates throughout the rest of the year before they go into effect for the following year. So just knowing when to look for the marketing and compliance data, it's important to kind of pay attention to it because major changes like the disclaimer rules have changed quite a bit. Scope of appointment rules have changed quite a bit. Event rules have changed quite a bit. So just paying attention yearly, what's going on. And I think those are some good like locations where you can find that data.
Absolutely. Moving into some other resources, CMS Newsroom, fantastic place to keep up to date with CMS programs and initiatives. You can, again, sign up for notifications and emails anytime they drop something in there. That's where you'll find a lot of fact sheets, which are kind of condensed versions of these final rules or other regulatory guidance, as well as updates and notices of new programs like new trial models or things from the CMS Innovation Center. It can be a really good place to, again, pull some things that can be really useful for your social media or your programming out to your clients.
Yeah. For sure. And like you said, you can sign up for emails. So it's very easy to find. You just hop into CMS and there should even be like a little newsroom button on the top. Yep. And it's really good spot just to see kind of what's going on in the industry overall. So the next thing we want to jump into is LIS data. There is a ton of low-income subsidy resources and data for your clients, especially if you're working with any dual clients. Again, Medicaid is always monitored by the states, but LIS data is specifically put out by the federal government. So tons of resources, everything from like when are the notices, the mailing sent out. So paying attention, even helping them like what color the notices are. A lot of the times they're mentioned in there. Resources on limits. There's fact sheets about, for example, like what do I do if I no longer automatically qualify for extra help? So there's lots of different resources for LIS, but it's all hosted on cms.gov.
Absolutely. And again, with LIS changing for 2024, where it's kind of a yes-no question, no more levels of LIS, I think some of these resources are going to be more important than ever. You can also find data on what happens to people who are automatically assigned a plan because they're eligible for LIS and how they can change that plan or what they may be assigned into. There's also some great data on things like your employer and retiree union coverage and the subsidies they can get for continuing to provide coverage once people are Medicare eligible. And then there's forms.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of forms. The ones that we specifically reference, I'm sure probably the most, are appeal forms, specifically for prescription drugs, which also goes into step therapy exceptions. And then, of course, you can also find your Part B exception appeal form. Basically, if someone's had major life changes, especially if they're new to Medicare, it's always based on 2 years prior tax information. So you might want to look into appealing how much they're actually paying for their Part B, and maybe be able to help them save a little bit of money whenever they go into that, set income once they retire.
Yep, absolutely. Lots of great stuff on there for not just for appeals, but also how to apply for formulary exceptions or step therapy exceptions, how to file a grievance against a plan, how to complete these different forms to appeal IRMA, to apply for Part B, even though that's actually a Social Security form. You can oftentimes find it on Medicare, on Medicare's website, but lots of great resources out there, and including one of the forms that we reference constantly is what Medicare is actually going to mail you throughout the year. All of the different documents and form letters and notices that you might get, what color paper they're printed on, how to identify the different things. That way, again, clients can recognize and understand what's actually from Medicare compared to what might be advertising or marketing, and just kind of keep those straight.
Yeah, and they actually revamped Medicare.gov. So most of the stuff we talked about today has been CMS.gov. Medicare.gov we'll wrap up with some Medicare.gov resources, but the mailings throughout the year is going to be a really good spot to reference for Medicare.gov. They've got it broken down. They've recently done this, so you should just be like, blah, like everything there. Now it's, signing up data, cost and coverage, help with costs and other mailings. So now you can kind of filter down like what kind of mailing am I actually looking for, but as an agent helping your client know what they're getting, and then also say, well, what color is it? And if they say like it's tan, you can say, well, it means this, so having just a little bit of extra knowledge, all of that is there. And then in addition to that, if they're really not sure if it's real or legit, you can actually go on there and pull up exactly the wording that they're getting in the mail and say, does it look like this? And if it does, then it's real. If it doesn't, maybe it's something that's like a spoof or a scammy type thing that's supposed to look like it. But it's just another resource that you as an agent can do to help ensure that your clients are taken care of and actually what's happening in the government and what they're actually getting in the mail.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, kind of the last big one we wanted to touch on was Medicare publications. And that's really just kind of a blanket term for anything that is a beneficiary-facing piece that CMS publishes every year. So they have over 200 publications that cover everything from preventative care to what to expect from your Welcome to Medicare visit, calendars, all sorts of pamphlets and documents going over, who pays first, or resources for caregivers, or chronic conditions, different checklists when you're getting out of the hospital, and understanding your rights around second opinions. They're really good resources that clients can pick up sometimes at their doctor's office, sometimes at Social Security office, but they're also things that you can access, download those PDFs, again, use them for resources for your clients if they have particular needs going on, or again, pulling content out of there for your social media and marketing.
Yeah, there's like literally sky is the limit on how you can utilize these. I've had people do weekly events with, an organization that they're involved with and pull one of those each week. It's CMS documents that you can hand out. They're approved. As long as you're not putting your contact information on it or putting stickers on there and you're just putting your separate business card, or, maybe you have a trifold brochure with everything that you offer next to it. I think just having them as a resource, and it gives you good event content. It gives you great social media content. It gives you great newsletter content. There's so many different things. Offer it to your caregivers. You can use it for networking pieces. Literally, there's so many good pieces in several different languages as well. So definitely, if you've never checked it out, go check them out, because there's so many different things that you can learn and also provide as resources.
And I think that's really kind of what this episode has all been about, is, how to make yourself stand out as a resource in your community, with your clients, with your prospects, and really just in the industry. And by accessing these resources, you can really provide that expertise, and knowing where to find the answer is oftentimes way more important than knowing at the drop of a hat some arcane law or rule or something like that. So, use these resources, use these links in the show notes to make sure that you can find answers for your clients to better serve them, to know how to strategically market to these different opportunities that you can uncover in the data, and then just know what's available to help your clients. And with that, we'll leave you all until next time.